Tonight's State of the Nation, the Justice Department will appeal a restraining order blocking the U.S. government from denying asylum to those entering the U.S.
The DOJ already asked a federal lower court judge to put a restraining order on hold while the appeal is filed. The judge will rule on that request by Friday. The appeal will be taken to the 9th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals. That's the same court President Trump lashed out against last week. Trump says he's willing to take it all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. Republicans backing the president tonight.
But we know that there's at least 600 convicted criminals part of this caravan. We also know that every member of the caravan was offered asylum and not just work permits, but jobs by Mexico.
Well, tonight, the White House is calling on Congress to spend $5 billion on a border wall.
President Trump says unless Congress coughs up the dough, another government shutdown may be inevitable. Mark Meredith has more from Capitol Hill.
We have an opportunity in the next coming weeks to get a few more things done.
Outgoing House Speaker Paul Ryan says Republicans are running out of time to deliver on one of President Trump's biggest promises.
We want to secure our border.
Ryan says he supports the president's demand for $5 billion to begin building a border wall. The president says unless he gets the money, he may support a government shutdown next week. But so far, Democrats are showing no signs of giving in. Ohio Democratic Congressman Tim Ryan.
And the president promised the American people that if he built a wall, it was going to be paid for by Mexico. And he's going back on that promise.
Congress has already passed 5 of 12 spending bills for next year, meaning if there is a shutdown, it would only affect parts of the government, and many essential services would remain up and running. Senate Democrats say they're willing to spend $1.6 billion on border security, but the money should not go to building a wall. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham says that's not enough.
Secure the border is going to be a bottom line for the president.
Political expert Gary Nordlinger says a shutdown is not a sure bet.
If they end up with a government shutdown, that doesn't benefit anybody.
And in the end, the odds are on a compromise that will keep the government running. On Capitol Hill, I'm Mark Meredith.
So here is tonight's Fox 16's Bottom Line. Talking to the Washington Post, President Trump says he's considering a contingency plan if he does not get money for a border wall. It could include the use of troops and razor wire to prevent immigrants from entering the country. If he does not get the $5 billion he's asking for, Trump says there are other ways he could secure the border.
Let's get to the border. President Trump declaring, quote, a very possible shutdown if we don't get the wall money. This as a U.S. official saying no criminal charges have been filed against the 42 migrants who were arrested for illegally crossing the border during that caravan protest that ended in tear gas. The Associated Press reports charges were not filed because the accused had things like medical problems or issues with having children alongside them, or they were accompanying children. And there's also an issue on whether or not they were actually deported. We're staying on to getting to the facts of that story. Let's bring in Republican Texas Congressman Michael Burgess. Great to see you, sir.
Thanks for having me on, Liz. I appreciate it.
What is the holdup in Congress over getting money for the border wall?
Well, the deadline is the 7th of December. There was a continuing resolution passed the end of September that gave us until December. It is possible that there will be required another very short-term extension, but I believe that an agreement can be reached, and I believe the president needs to get the money for the wall that he's asked. We all saw last weekend the images of people coming to the fence, literally coming through the fence. The fence is not secure. The infrastructure needs to exist to secure the border, and the president is exactly correct, and he needs to get the money to do the job.
Yeah, our border authorities say a border wall would help them, back them up in their efforts at the border. You make an important point. Now, the president, this is a story that's coming fast next week. He is saying he will shut down the government. Do you think a deal can get done here, sir?
Well, the actual mechanics of a government shutdown would come from the lapse of appropriations if an agreement can't be reached on the 7th, or if there is indeed a short-term extension on whatever point after that. So it's not actually an action by the White House that shuts the government down. It would be failure to reach an agreement and an appropriations lapse that occurs in Homeland Security. Do bear in mind that a number of the appropriations bills did pass last September, so unlike in 2013, when a similar situation existed, the United States military has been funded, the Department of Health and Human Services has been funded, so there are significant funding bills that have already passed. Homeland Security is one of the ones that remains. It needs to be done. The president needs to get his money.
Yeah, it's sir, it would be a partial shutdown. I hear what you're saying. So what what dollar figure do you have in your mind that you think is the correct number?
Well, the president has said he needs $25 billion to build the wall, and that this year a $5 billion installment is what is required. I believe that is correct, and that's what the Congress should provide the president. I think that the votes are there on the House side to get that done. The difficulty, as always, is on the Senate side with a 60 vote margin that's required. This is one of those times that I believe that the Senate Majority Leader should forego the 60-vote rule and just simply pass the bill with 51 votes. This is too important.
Can he do that?
Yes, yes.
On what grounds?
Well, it has happened before, and in fact, it happened, of course, with the Supreme Court Justice Gorsuch, where they suspended the 60-vote rule. He's then obviously will be challenged on that, but he sustains it with a simple majority. So there would also be the possibility of doing another quick reconciliation bill that would only require 51 votes to pass. So there are avenues to get this done. It is unconscionable that the Senate leader on the Democratic side would shut down the government because he doesn't want to defend our southern border.
Congressman Burgess, thank you so much. We'll have you back on again soon, sir. Great to see you.
Thank you.
Our construction is set to begin on the Valley's latest border security project. This one involves the installation of 35 automated gates along Cameron County's existing border fence. This is filed video of that original structure, which is now about 10 years old. We reported on the project update last month after learning the construction contract had been awarded. Again, actual construction set to begin tomorrow.
President Trump's threats to shut down the U.S. and Mexico border permanently has many university students concerned with what that means for the future of their education here in the United States. According to UTEP officials, there are nearly 650 students enrolled at the university for the fall 2018 semester who have a permanent mailing address in Ciudad Juarez. But this number doesn't account for those students who have mailing addresses in El Paso and commute daily from across the border as well. UTEP officials say the total amount can be much more. As KTSM previously reported, a potential border closure can harm the economy of the borderland, and today students from UTEP and EPCC tell us it would disrupt not only their education but their livelihood.
I mean, I work here and I do everything here. I do my market shopping here, grocery store, gas here. I mean, everything is on this side. I just pretty much sleep on the other side of the country.
Some students tell me they're already planning to stay with friends or family in El Paso in case Trump does shut down the border, but many say they don't have anywhere to stay on this side of the bridge. In addition to students who come across the border for their college education, many students come for primary education as well. And according to the Texas Education Agency, if there is a significant drop in attendance, this can affect school funding. Reporting live near the U.S.-Mexico border, Stephanie Shields, KTSM 9 News.
A lot happening on the border. I want to get right into it with former Maricopa County Sheriff Joe Arpaio. Sheriff Joe, great to have you back on the show.
My pleasure.
All right, Sheriff, the situation on the border pretty volatile. Want to get your take on the tactics being deployed by the Border Patrol and local law enforcement. I was a law enforcement guy. I have no problem with tear gas. It has the left in a frenzy. What do you say?
Well, I think you're asking me about the situation going on in Mexico and the U.S. border right now, and also my background. I have to briefly say this. I was a regional director for the U.S. Drug Enforcement in Mexico City, South America, Honduras. I can go on and on. Fought that battle for 35 years as a top guy insurer for 24 years. So when I look at what's going on, it brings back memories. I remember G. Gordon Liddy and I, 1969 under Nixon, we ran an Operation Intercept, and put hundreds and thousands of federal guys at the border and searched every car that backed up traffic to Mexico City. The president went out front and said, you know, if you don't stop it, we're taking away your foreign aid. And actually it worked, because after I took over in Mexico City, we negotiated, I did, with the Attorney General and President, and got some cooperation. I'm a little careful to talk right now what's going on. You know, I'm 100% backing my president, Donald Trump, and I don't know what his plan is, but I kind of like at least the infancy stage of what is going on in that situation in California, Tijuana, San Diego.
All right, Sheriff, I only have about 35 seconds left. Very sorry, very short break. Donald Trump is threatening to shut down the government if he doesn't get the $5 billion for the border wall. Democrats want to only give him $1.6 million. Do you back the president's strategy here?
Of course I back the president since July of 2015, and he's doing the right thing. Let's see who bends on this issue. I just gave you the Operation Intercept, what happened in 69. So yeah, I support him.
And you support his strategy with shutting down the government if he doesn't get the money?
Hey, what's more important? Shutting down the government or have the terrorists and coming across and criminals and all that? If it takes down shutting down the government or putting the army at the border, I think it should be across the border, the U.S. Army, like when I was over there. But yeah, you got to do everything you can. This is a bluff case. It's a negotiation case. He's pretty good, the president, in negotiating with leaders across the country and also in other countries.
He certainly is. Sheriff Joe Arpaio, former Maricopa County Sheriff, thanks so much for your time and expertise, Sheriff. Great to see you.
Welcome back. One final point before we go tonight. Democrats claim the migrant caravan is law-abiding, peaceful, and innocent, that it's mostly families with women and children, legitimate asylum seekers, and Democrats say that using tear gas to disperse the mobs that stormed the border is terrorism. Tonight, we're going to debunk all these claims the left is peddling about the migrant caravan, because all the claims are false. So let's get started. First of all, is the caravan law-abiding? That's a no. According to the Border Patrol, the hundreds of migrants who stormed the border on Sunday were throwing projectiles and rocks at Border Patrol agents. A Border Patrol agent in San Diego said the men in the caravan pushed the women and children to the front and used them as human shields while the men threw rocks at U.S. law enforcement. Does that sound law-abiding or peaceful to you? No, it's not. Second claim from the left, is the caravan innocent? According to the Department of Homeland Security, at least 500 of the migrants in this caravan are criminals, convicted of crimes in their country of origin. Dozens more have committed crimes in Mexico since they arrived there, not to mention the hundreds who stormed the U.S. border, which obviously is against the law. That's hardly innocent. Third claim from the left, are most of the migrants in this caravan women and children? An anchor from MSNBC tried to paint a picture of these migrants as poor mothers fleeing violence with their babies, but MSNBC's own reporter, who was embedded with the caravan, contradicted the anchor, saying, no, there are some women and children, some families, but most of the caravan migrants are young males who are coming to the U.S. for work and economic gain, mostly male. That brings us to the fourth claim from the left. One liberal commentator said, we shouldn't even call this caravan migrants. We should call them asylum seekers because that's what they are. Well, yeah, the migrants are trying to claim asylum as a way to get into the U.S., but according to a federal judge and statistics from the Department of Homeland Security, 90% of migrants from Central American countries who claim asylum don't qualify for asylum under our asylum laws. So are these migrants legitimate asylum seekers? History and reports from within the caravan say no. Finally, the fifth claim from the left, using tear gas to disperse the migrants who stormed the border on Sunday, was inhumane. One Democratic senator suggested it was a violation of international chemical weapons law, and other liberals called President Trump a terrorist for doing this. Did the left forget that President Obama did the exact same thing in 2013? Obama used pepper spray to disperse migrants storming the border in the exact same place? Obama did this many times. Was it terrorism then? No, it wasn't. And the Department of Homeland Security says nobody was killed or injured on Sunday when Border Patrol defended our border. Yet, Democrats keep telling us this migrant caravan is law-abiding, peaceful, innocent, families with women and children mostly, legitimate asylum seekers, and using tear gas to stop them breaching our border is inhumane, even though none of those talking points is true. And that is my final point.